I'm Zibby Owens, and you're listening to the award-winning podcast, Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. Please sign up for my newsletter at zibbyowens.com for updates on podcast guests and lots of live events. I'm so excited that Recliner NYC is partnering with me because I found this longish nightgown thing, and I don't wear nightgowns usually, but it's like a floor-length kind of dress made out of the softest fabric I've ever felt, and the front is light gray and the back is black, and it goes all the way to the floor, and I saw it on an ad on Instagram and had to get it, and now I bought it, and I'm obsessed, so we went after Recliner in New York City, and they gave us a discount, and you can find it on my website. It's amazing. I'm so excited to partner with them. 9/10 of the customers told them that their products have helped improve their sleep, which I totally believe because these pajamas and my nightgown and everything are functional, but kind of stylish and really awesome. So go to recliner.nyc and use code MOMSXRECLINER. Mom's X Recliner, and you get 20% off, which I wish I had when I got my nightgown. So anyway, go check it out and tell me what you think. I loved it. I had the best time talking to Ruthie Lindsey, who is the author of There I Am, The Journey from Hopelessness to Healing, a memoir. A speaker, author, podcast host, and social media figure, Ruthie travels the globe sharing her story, empowering others to find purpose in their pain, and to, quote, look for beauty in the midst of their sacred wounds. Well, thank you so much for coming on Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. I am so honored to talk to you. I adored your book. It was so good.
Thank you so much. That means so much to me. I'm so appreciative. I received that. Thank you.
You know, it's funny because when I was first pitched your book, I read about it, but it was one of the only books that included a trailer, right?
Oh,
so
yeah.
Jessica Roth, anyway, the trailer, I was sitting on the floor with somebody who I used to work with, and we were sitting there watching your trailer, sobbing.
Aww.
So anyway, I was preparing myself for your book before I read it, and it was so good. Anyway, sorry to go on and on, but
thank you. That is so kind, and I'm so appreciative of you taking the time to do this with me. Well, for reading the book in the first place, that's a big commitment. I'm like, man, I don't know. It's not lost on me that takes up a lot of time. And so the fact that you would choose to do that, it means a lot to me. So thank you so much.
I read every page and I was clinging on every word. And there were times, honestly, when some of the things were happening to you in the book where I almost couldn't face it anymore. Like some of the medical stuff. I mean, you have been through so much.
It's been a journey.
It's been a journey. I should probably ask for the people listening, since I just jumped right into that. Could you please tell listeners what your book is about, please?
Yeah. So it's my first memoir and hopefully my only book. Oh my God, what a journey. And it's basically me getting to share my story. I've kind of, everyone has a lot of hard things and trauma and loss and pain if you're here in Earth School. But my story starts out in South Louisiana where I grew up. And when I was a senior in high school, I pulled out in front of an ambulance and he hit me on my car door going 65. So I broke 3 ribs and they punctured my lungs and my lungs collapsed and my spleen ruptured. And then I broke the top 2 vertebrae in my neck, which at the time they told me I had a 5% chance to live and a 1% chance to walk. And I mean, I was very lucky to be hit by an ambulance because he knew what to do, right? But they got me to the emergency room and got me on life support. They had to do an emergency surgery for my internal bleeding and put in chest tubes. But then after I was stable, I guess it took about a week before they could get me off life support. They went in to fuse my neck. So they took bone from my hip and they wrapped it with wire once they had my neck back into place. And that was just that's what they did back then in the late 90s. And so I was in the hospital about a month. I was just really lucky. I was so young and healthy. And I mean, I left there with half a shaved head and a neck brace, but otherwise you would never know looking at me, anything had happened. All my scars are hidden from my clothing or my hair, and I kind of looked like the picture of health. I mean, I wore a neck brace for about 5 months or so, but after that, I mean, I I did not have any real residual effects at the time. Like, I mean, if I would like dance too much, I would get sore, and that's about the gist of it. And honestly, I think a lot of times when we're traumatized, like we disassociate just to survive, right? And so I completely had done that. I mean, I would talk about it in like third person, and I'd always say that it was like so much harder on my family and friends than it was on me, because I didn't remember much. I was on life support, I was drugged and I was out of it. And I had just kind of completely left my body. So I was very disconnected, and it was a very third person thing at the time. And I mean, I was super lucky. It happened on my dad's birthday, my senior year, which was November 2nd. I went back to school after Christmas. I was able to graduate on time. Like it's pretty wild. It was a very speedy recovery. And I went on to college. I was still very disassociated for sure. I definitely had some like eating things. I was just trying to stuff my feelings to avoid all of it. But I would still, I mean, I'm very Southern. I was like, show up, you smile, you be sweet, you be pretty. Like that's what it was taught to me growing up, right? So I did that. And so no one would really know that I was inside struggling. And because I never showed that part of me at that time. And so then I moved to Nashville right out of college. I was offered a job, and I met my first boyfriend, and my parents were like so stoked he was a boy because they were convinced I was a lesbian. I'm like, I wish that would be such a dream. But no, I like boys. But I just had never been real interested in dating before that. And we were like, oh my God, just super earnest, trying to be Christians, like the Southern thing. And we felt so guilty about having sex that we literally got married 10 months later because we were just little idiots. And, we were just hopeful. And he was a musician. I would tour with him and excited about starting our lives. We bought a house and we had all these dreams. And about a year into our marriage, we were so young. One day I was like walking in front of a Starbucks, and this crazy shooting pain went up my neck. And I remember thinking, like, did I just get struck by lightning? But it was this gorgeous day, or shot. Like it was that intense. It was so debilitating. And I fell to my knees, and I remember feeling like I was going to vomit, and I was left with this like black inky spots in my eyesight. Like this migraine. And I mean, of course, it was so scary because I had no idea what that was. And after I was able to collect myself, I went home. We started going to all these different doctors. And every time I'd go see a different doctor, they'd have me do a film. I always get MRI and CAT scan confused, but I'm pretty sure it was MRI. And every time the MRI film would come back, there'd be this black spot on my film where my spinal cord fusion was. And they'd say, oh, that's just the magnet in the machine interacting with the wire from your fusion. Everything around it's fine. They started me on all these therapies. Nothing helped. I mean, I've tried every therapy under the sun. And then they started me on narcotics because I was just in so much pain and I didn't want to hurt all the time. So I took everything they suggested, right? And I mean, that started me down a pretty dark path. I eventually found myself like in bed for a good part of more than like 4 years. So probably about 4.5 years, I was just living in my bed and taking all of the narcotics, not showing up as a partner, watching a ton of TV, eating my feelings, not working, not showing up as a sister, an aunt, a friend. I mean, my life just halted, completely. And it felt very dark and very hopeless just because we kept seeing a ton of different doctors and we tried the things they recommended. And anyway, after about 4.5 years, finally a doctor was like, I can't tell you what's happening until I see what's under that spot. And I was like, oh, like that sounds so like, right. Okay. So basically a $50 x-ray. I mean, what's also interesting is my husband's an artist and I was self-employed. So everything had been out of pocket because it was a pre-existing injury. So every time I get like an MRI, it would be, $1,500, $2,000. And so finally this doctor's like, oh, we need to do a $50 x-ray. And basically what they discovered is one of the wires from my previous spinal cord fusion had broken and pierced into my brainstem. And I'm the only human that's ever had that. And, thankfully, they spared me a lot of the details at the time because I couldn't have handled it. I was not in a good place. But they told me basically, you're the only person in the world. You shouldn't be walking. If we don't get this out, you won't be walking. Surgery itself was super high risk of paralysis. But what I've learned since is, that's where my wire was in my reptile brain, right? Our oldest part of our brain. So if someone's on life support, that's what they're keeping alive. So that is that's it. That's like the main source of I shouldn't be alive. I shouldn't be speaking. I shouldn't be breathing. I shouldn't be, of course, walking, but I shouldn't be anything like that, And so it was really scary. And we knew I had to have the surgery. Insurance wouldn't cover it. So my dad, who we called Papa, so precious. It's hard to describe him. If he walked in the room, you would be drawn to him. You'd want to go stand in his presence. He was the most magnetic human I think I've ever known. This larger than life. He was 6'4", just his eyes glowed, and he just drew people in. And he plowed our garden with a mule. He was like this, I don't know how to describe. It's so wild. I don't know anyone else like him. And every time he'd leave my brothers and I when we were children, he'd say, I love you so much. Remember your manners and always look out for the little guy. That was his thing. He wanted us to look out for the people that everyone else would miss, And so he had told my mom and my godfather that he was going to come see me and tell me he would sell our farm so that I could have this surgery because insurance wouldn't cover it. And on his way, he stopped to visit our Amish friends because we have Amish friends, as you do, to pick up a donkey or a mule, who knows. And we don't know exactly what happened because he was alone at the time, but somehow he tripped and fell down a flight of stairs and ended up passing of brain damage. And we just actually had the anniversary of his death last week. And, it was such a massive loss. And it wasn't just a loss for me and my family. It was a loss for a massive community because he had touched so many people's lives and had changed so many people's lives. He was in education. And so, I just remember I would pinch myself until I'd literally bleed in my bed because I'd be like, wake up. You're in a nightmare. This can't be real. This can't be your life. It's interesting. Just yesterday, a Facebook memory came up, which I never look at those, but I just happened to look. And it was the day after we had buried my dad. And I'd gone to see a doctor that my brother had set up. And they had told me kind of all the details about what we had to do and how bad it was. And I posted on Facebook, I was like, I just had a horrible doctor's appointment. And it's really hard for me to believe that there is a God that's good. And I remember I felt that so deeply. I remember feeling so abandoned and I felt so forgotten and lost, which was never true. But that's what my sweet little self felt in that moment, and I just read that yesterday and it just broke my heart. And I wanted to just wrap her up and be like, oh my gosh, you precious soul. Anyway, it was heartbreaking and hard. But what was so beautiful in the midst of that is my godfather ended up setting up this medical fund in my dad's honor for me to have this life or death surgery. And people started coming out of the woodworks being like, your dad paid my rent. Your dad bought my prom dress. Your dad fixed my roof. Your dad sent me on my senior trip. Your dad sent me in my first year of college. And I need you to know that we did not have very much, at all. But my godfather, who owned this bank, he was like, yeah, he would take out loans so that he could go and do these things for other people. And he was that was him. And it felt the full amount of money was raised for me to have this crazy spinal cord fusion because of the way he had shown up and loved people in the world. I just feel so honored to be Lloyd Lindsey's daughter, it's just such a privilege. And so he did that for me. And I started being pursued by all these doctors, they get off on being the one person to do surgery. So I was literally like a beetle. They all wanted me. I was heavily pursued. And I ended up choosing Mayo Clinic. And this top neurologist, top orthopedic surgeon did it together. And they were like, we hope it'll help with your pain. But listen, this is to keep you breathing and walking and living. And so, I put all my hope in this thing outside of me to help me make me better. And we went in, they took the wire that was piercing my brainstem, took bone from my other hip, and this time they refused it with titanium screws. And because wires can break, super rare, but it happens. And, I'll spare you all the details of the hospital. It was really hard. And, I'd been on so many narcotics up to that point that it was so hard for them to get my pain under control. Because, I was like on one of the highest levels of fentanyl patch before going into the hospital, which they give dying cancer patients. And so I would have told you I lived at a 10 before that surgery. And then I was like, oh, just kidding. I didn't know my pain could be this much worse. I remember I just had like popped blood vessels from like screaming, in my eyes. It was real hard. But after a week, I had my head shaved again. I had another big ass neck brace, and I walked out of there with that wire in my hand and a lot of pain. And after the pain from the surgery died down, I ended up realizing I had pretty severe nerve damage. My whole right side just felt like it was on fire, like all the time, completely burning fire. Like the best way I know how to describe it, I don't know if y'all know about this because I'm from the South, but we have fire ants, like red ants. And one time my right foot, because it's down my whole entire side, my right foot was standing in a pile of fire ants. And my brother yelled at me, he's like, babe, move. And I had like over 100 fire ant bites up my right leg, and I didn't know it. Because I think partly because I was disassociated, but also that's just what it feels like. It's fire, right? And so I didn't know. And so I actually walked straight back to my bed. I was on even more drugs at this point and way more hopeless because that one thing I'd put all my, hope in didn't fix me. It fixed me in the sense that I was walking, but I couldn't even see that really. I was still in so much pain. And I was like, these four walls are going to be the rest of my life. And that felt so dark and so hopeless. And so I actually lived in my bed for 2 more years until a whole other wild events happened that basically took me to my breaking point. My marriage was coming to an end. I caught C. diff in the hospital for a different surgery, which is just a whole other story. And whew, that was dark. And I hit a wall, it was more than a wall. I had a complete nervous breakdown. I stopped sleeping. My life felt over. My husband was on tour in Australia. He couldn't deal with it anymore. And I didn't blame him. I'd been like that for 7 years, And can you imagine how hard that would be for a partner? We were babies, and this started a year into our marriage. He was 21 when we got married. And I broke. And now I love to call it my breakthrough, but it was a breakdown. It was so traumatic. And I remember feeling shame on a level that's hard to even put into words. I felt like I was sweating shame. Every part of my being felt so ashamed of myself. And I grew up in a world that was like, what you portray on the outside is what matters, right? And what I was portraying on the outside was a complete nightmare. I couldn't take care of myself. I kept ending up in the emergency room someone would have to take me because I was so sick and I was so not okay. And which is such a story and it's not true, but I would just think over and over. I'd have panic attacks all night and be like, my dad is so ashamed of who I am. I had a lot of just very limiting lies in my head that were not true, but I believed with every part of me. And my family they were amazing. And I had to move in with my older brother, who we've been close my whole life. He helped raise me. And they were going to send me away to get help because I was obviously not okay. And again, because I cared so much what people thought, the next day I literally started weaning myself off the drugs out of fear of being sent away of what people would think, which is the most ridiculous motivation, but who cares? It got me to get off these freaking drugs, which narcotics are it's created for acute pain, not long lasting chronic things, because you just need more and more and more. And you become a shell. I was a shell of a human. And when you numb the hard, painful things, you're also numbing every beautiful, good, sweet, lovely thing. And so my life just felt void of all beauty. It just felt dark and hopeless. And so I started weaning off everything. I had to relearn how to live. I remember, and again, the motivation is don't get sent away. So I made this list of things to learn how to live again. I remember making a list of 8 o'clock, you get out of bed. And you don't get back in that bed until it's dark outside. And I'm like, what the hell do people do all day? I literally don't know. I would like watch my nephews to see like, what do humans do all freaking day long? And I'd be like, 8:05, brush your teeth. I'm like, scratch that off. 8:15, eat breakfast, scratch that off. And so at first it was literally like that. It was going through the motions, feeling dead and numb inside. And then, I don't know if it was like my higher self, if it was my dad, if it was God, the universe, whatever, who cares? But something told me to write a list of things I'd love to do before I had pain. So I remember writing this list. This is probably 2 or 3 weeks in. And I was like, Ruthie, you love flowers. I'm like, no, I don't. I'm like, yes, you do. You love them. And then I was like, you love sunsets. I'm like, I don't care. I'm like, yeah, you do. You love them. And I remember I wrote, you love people. And I swear to you, I remember having this like maniacal laugh at being like, no, I don't. They're the worst. And I'm like, yes, you do. You love them. So I started making myself each day do one thing on that list that I had loved before I had pain. And I don't know. I think the action has to come first. And I just was like hoping that an emotion would ultimately come, but it was like the motion had to come first. And it took a few weeks. I would do something each day. And finally, as I was like coming off of these drugs and able to feel the level, I mean, listen, I was feeling my pain very viscerally and, de-thawing, I guess would be a great way to describe it. And it was very scary and very hard. But I also was able to start seeing beauty. And that almost became my new mission. It was like, look for beauty everywhere. And when you see it, talk about it, speak it out loud, and experience it. And in people and in things and in places. And it was almost like my new drug, because and I remember in that same time hearing this quote that the deeper sorrow carves into your being, the more joy you can contain. And bawling, crying when I read that, because I was like, that is going to be my story. I am going to get to experience joy on like such a soul level, And so that became kind of my mission. And I mean, so much has happened. That was a little over 7 years ago. So much has happened since then. I mean, my marriage ended. I ended up moving home. It took me about 4 months to get off all the drugs, which was the best thing I've ever done in my life. The thing that I remember feeling like re-falling in love with the things around me. Like I remember seeing my nieces and nephews. Most of them had been born while I was in this state, right? And all of a sudden I would look at them and be like, oh my you are such a miracle. You precious, beautiful child. Like they are the most magical kids. I can't even tell you. I'm so madly in love with these children. And I hadn't seen them. I had just been in this fog, only thinking about my pain. And I think we teach people how to see us. And so all I had taught anyone was I was my pain. And I believed that with every part of me. And so when people would see me, they'd be like, how are you? How are you feeling? And they felt sorry for me. And I felt almost validation in their sympathy, right? It validated me living in my bed, not showing up as a partner, not working, not showing up as a sister or an aunt or a friend. And all of a sudden in that time when I was changing my life, because it was like, whatever I was doing obviously isn't working. So I need to do the opposite in every way. And I remember being like, when people leave me, I want them to feel seen. I want them to feel heard and loved and not sorry for me. And so it's so fun now. It's not even a conversation. I mean, right now it's a conversation because my book came out today. So I'm talking about my pain more than but like my best friends tell me all the time, like, I forget that that's even a part of your story because that's not what I lead with anymore. And I've learned so much over the years about like mind body connection and about how our body holds on to trauma and can get lodged there until we learn how to process it. So the last 7 years have just been this beautiful, hard, painful, amazing, every emotion under the sun because I feel it all now. I'm no longer numbing it, and it's the most glorious, brutal, beautiful, painful experience, but I get to experience life. I get to experience people. I have the absolute privilege. I'm on my period, so I feel really cry. But like, I have the absolute privilege of like showing up and being like, listen, like we were created to heal. And I get to do this work on myself and then get to show up and be a mirror of that to those around me. Like I can't fix anything. I can't fix anyone else. I can only do this on myself. But what I can do is do that work for myself and then show up and be a mirror of that love for everyone around me, and a mirror of like, this healing is for you. This love is yours. This divinity is in you. Like, I even say that in my book. I'm like, listen, when you finish this, forget me, forget my name, forget my story. This is for you. Healing is for you. This hope is yours. This love is yours. You don't need me. I'm going to get the fuck out of the way so you can do this journey, because you're so deserving. And I feel like the healing journey is remembering what's so right with us, not what's wrong with us. And it's an unlearning more than anything else, because I thought I was so broken. I believed that. I thought my body hated me. I thought it was the source of this pain. So I thought my body had just completely failed me. And now I'm like, oh my God, this beautiful body that's just been loving me and holding me and like holding the divinity within me and calling me home and just protecting me and being so strong and so resilient and loving me so hard when I hated her. And I think all of these painful things that happened ultimately were all these invitations to come home to myself and to do this work. Like if my life had turned out the way I thought it would, I would be a very surfacey human that would never have woken up, that would never have gone so deep, would never have been able to be a good friend, honestly, an empathetic friend. I wouldn't be able to show up in the world the way that I believe I can now and have the honor of getting to now, because all those things happened. And I wouldn't change it. Like I wouldn't change one single thing, because I know it all created me to be this human that I have the honor of getting to be today. That's messy and all of the, like that makes tons of mistakes, but also is filled with so much goodness and wonder and beauty, just like every other soul on planet Earth. And so I just talked for a really long time, but that's a bit of the story.
Oh my gosh. Thank you. Thank you for telling the story again. I mean, I know I just read it, but hearing it directly from you and your emotion and your eyes, and oh my gosh, oh my gosh, the fact that you would go through all that and say you wouldn't change a thing. I mean, you are like, not like Gandhi, but you're like you're like a spiritual like gift to the world now. Like, and I think that's what you're like excited about yourself, right? The power that holds and able to help so many people. I mean, it's really beautiful. And your story is unlike anything I have ever heard. And you are, oh my gosh, my grandmother would say you are one tough cookie. I mean, unbelievable.
We're such resilient beings. Like, and we're so, at 17, if you had told me what was coming, I'd been like, just kill me now. Bye. Gotta go. Like, I don't think, but that's what's so amazing. We are so strong and we are so resilient and we are so worthy. And I don't think that we don't have a tenth of a clue of how resilient we actually are and our power and our strength. Like, you hear people say like, I could never deal with that. If it happens to you, yes, you can. Like yes, you can. And it doesn't mean it's not really fucking hard. Of course. Like I wouldn't, like when everyone's struggling, right? Like pain is universal. Everyone has loss. Every human has trauma on some level. I don't care who you are. You can be in denial about it, but you do. And I would never look at them and be like, good luck. It's going to be amazing. You're going to be able to grow. Like it's so hard and it's so painful and it breaks my heart. I don't want anyone to have to suffer, right? Ever. Like I would never wish loss or death or divorce or pain on anyone. But in the same breath, what I know is like, these are our invitations to like, they get to be like, they become like, my pain has become my privilege and it doesn't define me anymore. It's not who I am. It's what ended up being the thing that was the catalyst to becoming who I was meant to be. And that feels like a privilege to me. And so I want to say, like, there's so much hope. Like, this isn't the end. And I know so many people are struggling. Like, I'm a feeler. Like, I feel the collective fear and pain. Like, there's so much trauma going on right now. And I am so privileged. I get to stay home. I can work from home. I have money to pay my bills. And there's so many that are just in such painful, hard, traumatic. There are kids that are home right now with abusive parents and they can't escape. And that makes me want to like, ugh. But in the same breath, like I can hold that in one hand, and in the other hand, I can hold on to so much hope and know that we were created to heal, that we were created, our bodies, our minds, our spirits were longing for homeostasis, to heal. And this is not the end. This is an invitation. And that gives me hope for like all of us, it really does. And I have to hold on to that when I feel more in the other hand, where I'm like, oh my God, there's so much pain. There's so much, and even like of course, we had this big tour plan, all these things, and everyone's life turned upside down and no one's life looks like what we expected. But now I'm like, this is perfect. Like, this is a story about my life turning upside down and finding hope and resilience and healing and joy and all the things. Like, my hope is that this story can be just like a balm, like a healing balm for those that are in the midst of just craziness that we're living through in a global pandemic. It's insane. Like, what in the world? So I don't know. I feel really honored that this gets to come out in this time,
I feel honored that you spoke to me about it, that you're speaking to my listeners about it, that you wrote it, and that everybody can have this. And oh my gosh, it's just, you are an incredible person. And I am honored to even get to talk to you. So thank you. Thank you for all that you did. And thank you for coming on. And I'm sorry for being late. And
you're perfect.
Happy pub day. And I'm so excited for you. And I can't wait to just follow you forever. And, be a big cheerleader and supporter in any way I can, because you are just the best. So
you are so precious, and I'm so honored this is my first interview on Pub Day.
Yay!
So what a beautiful way to start my day with your precious face. So I'm so grateful that you would give me this space to get to share my story, and your encouragement honestly means so, so much. And none of that is like lost on me. And I'm so appreciative, and thank you for your support and your generosity and kindness. It really means so much.
Of course. Oh my gosh. Well, enjoy the fruits of your labors today. I know it's not, I'm sure, what you expected, but I know you will find the joy in it. I don't even have to tell you. You're like a joy seeker, but take a minute to just be so proud of yourself, because it's really amazing. So
thank you so much, sister. I appreciate it. Have a beautiful day inside.
Okay, thank you. You too. Okay, bye, Ruthie. You've been listening to Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books with Zibby Owens. Please make sure to sign up for my newsletter at zibbyowens.com to get more updates about episodes like these, and also lots of live events. Thanks to Recliner NYC for being a partner, for giving everybody a discount of 20% off with the code MomsXRecliner, and for partnering with me after I loved your product so much. You can follow me on Instagram at Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. Thanks so much to Steve and Ryan at Texture Sound for the sound editing. And thank you to Morning Moon Productions for providing this fantastic intro and outro music. Thanks for listening. You could always email me at zibby@zibbyowens.com.